switch to visible unlimited data. 25 bucks a month. What? You should join. Oh, I'm down. I can't share the picture.
You should join Visible. It's only $25 a month. Look.
Unlimited data and hotspot. All on Verizon, America's best 5G network for just $25 a month. It's the ultimate wireless hack for those in the know. A top-tier network at a budget-friendly cost. Plans starting at just $25 a month. Tell your people. Visible. Live in the know.
I'm Jim Wright, and I'm proud to serve as the chairman of the Texas Railroad Commission. And I've spent my career working in and fighting for the industry that powers our state.
Love, character, cooperation.
cycles begin and legacies are forged. The last time Saturn crossed this line was 1996. Who were you in 1996? What did you believe was possible? What were you afraid of? That person and the person you are right now are separated by an entire Saturn cycle, 29 years. And tonight, the next cycle begins. This is the most important transit of 2026 for Capricorn. Not because it's dramatic, because it's foundational. Everything that happens to you over the next 2 years, every career shift, every relationship change, every moment of crisis and breakthrough traces back to what Saturn just did. And if you don't understand what that means, the next 24 months will feel like chaos. If you do understand, they'll feel like construction. Let me show you what actually happened last night and why your life is about to change direction. Saturn moves through one zodiac sign every 2.5 years. It takes 29 years to complete a full lap around the zodiac. When it changes sign, the tone of reality shifts. Not metaphorically, structurally. The rules change. What worked before stops working. What was impossible becomes available. What felt permanent cracks open. And when Saturn changes sign, Capricorn feels it first. Before the astrologers publish their articles, before the other signs notice anything, before the world catches up. Capricorns feel it in the silence of a Tuesday night, in the strange restlessness that has no source, in the sudden thought that says, everything is about to be different. You felt it. Maybe you. Saturn in Pisces lasted from March 2023 through yesterday. 2.5 years of swimming through emotional fog. 2.5 years of asking yourself questions that had no clear answers. 2.5 years of feeling like your natural strength, your clarity, your ability to build and execute was underwater, muffled, slowed, blunted. Let me be direct with you about what those 2.5 years cost, because I don't think anyone has said this to you plainly enough. Saturn in Pisces was brutal for Capricorns. Not the dramatic kind of brutal that gets sympathy. The quiet kind. The kind where you show up every day, do the work, hold the weight, and nobody notices you're drowning. The kind where your confidence erodes so slowly you don't realize it's gone until one morning you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Some of you lost careers during that transit. Not because you failed, because Pisces dissolves structure, and structure is what Capricorns are made of. It's like asking a stonemason to work with water. The tools don't fit. The material won't hold shape. You worked twice as hard and produced half as much. And when the results didn't match the effort, you blamed yourself. Because that's what Capricorns do. They take responsibility, even when the problem is cosmic. Some of you lost relationships, not because you stopped trying, because Pisces demands vulnerability without structure, emotion without plan, surrender without guarantee. And that is the hardest thing you can ask of someone whose entire operating system runs on planning and guarantees. Some of you lost yourself, not dramatically, gradually, one compromised boundary at a time, one swallowed opinion at a time, one "I'm fine" when you weren't fine at a time. That era ended last night at 7:11 p.m. Saturn in Aries is fire, It's direct. It's confrontational. Where Pisces said wait, Aries says move. Where Pisces said feel, Aries says act. Where Pisces said dissolve, Aries says build. Now, something most astrology channels won't tell you. Saturn is technically in its fall in Aries. That's a term meaning Saturn is uncomfortable in this sign. It's like sending a master architect into a war zone. The skills are real. The environment is hostile. The architect can still build, but every wall goes up under fire. This is not bad news. This is Capricorn news, because Capricorn is the sign that builds under pressure. Other signs need calm conditions. Other signs need perfect temperature. Capricorns look at the fire and say, fine, we'll use fireproof stone. Saturn in its fall means the next 2 years won't be gentle. But when has your path ever been gentle? Saturn gave you something in exchange for the difficulty. It gave you the ability to turn pressure into permanence, to turn resistance into results. That ability activates right now. There's a mechanism operating in the sky this week that amplifies this transit beyond anything we've seen since 1967. It's called mutual reception. Mars, the planet that rules Aries, is currently in Aquarius. Saturn, the planet that rules Aquarius, just entered Aries. Each planet is sitting in the other's home sign. They're exchanging energy, feeding each other, creating a closed circuit of power that neither planet could generate alone. What does this mean in practice? Your capacity for disciplined action just doubled. Mars gives Saturn courage. Saturn gives Mars patience. Alone, Mars is reckless. Alone, Saturn is cautious to the point of paralysis. Together, they create the strategic warrior, the one who picks the right battle at the right time with the right tools, and then finishes what others abandon. For Capricorn specifically, this mutual reception, when your ruler enters a power-sharing agreement with Mars, you inherit the terms. You gain access to Martian energy, the energy of initiative, confrontation, raw action, without losing Saturnian control. Speed without carelessness. Fire without burning down what you built. Aggression with architecture. This exact configuration hasn't appeared since the late 1960s. And what did Capricorns do then? They didn't retreat. They restructured entire industries. While the world was tearing itself apart in social upheaval, Capricorns took the rubble and built frameworks that held for the next 30 years. The mutual reception gave them the audacity to start over and the discipline to finish what they started. Nostradamus wrote about Saturn's transition from water to fire in Century 4. His language was coded, as always, designed to pass through centuries without losing meaning. He described the awakening of Earth's strongest when the old master crosses from the drowning sea into the mouth of the ram. Medieval astrologers used Earth references for Capricorn consistently. The old master was their recurring symbol for Saturn. The drowning sea, Pisces. The mouth of the ram, Aries. Nostradamus saw this transition as a turning point not just for individuals, but for civilizations. He noted that each time Saturn moved from water to fire, the people who carried Saturn's mark, those born under the 10th sign, entered what he called the Forge period, a period where everything soft was burned away and only the essential remained. The Forge reshapes what the ocean couldn't dissolve. Let that land for a second, because this is the sentence that defines the next 2 years of your life. Saturn in Pisces tried to dissolve your old structure. your old identity, your old way of operating, your old definition of success. Some of it dissolved, the parts that were hollow, because you held on to out of fear, not conviction. But the core didn't dissolve. The core of a Capricorn never dissolves. It goes underwater. It gets battered by currents. It disappears from view, but it remains intact, waiting. And now Saturn has carried that core into the Ford. The fire won't destroy it. The fire will reshape it into something harder, sharper, more defined than anything you've ever been. That is what started last night. Let me show you the historical proof, because this isn't theory. This is pattern. 1996, the last time Saturn entered Aries. The internet was becoming mainstream. Old industries were collapsing. Employment structures that had lasted generations were dissolving overnight. Bookstores were dying while Amazon was a startup nobody believed in. Newspapers were king while email was a novelty. The entire concept of how humans work, communicate, and build wealth was being rewritten in real time. And nobody knew which way to run, except Capricorns. Because Capricorns don't run. They assess. They calculate. They wait for the structure to reveal itself inside the chaos. And then they build while others are still panicking. The Capricorns who recognized the shift in 1996, who stopped trying to save the old economy and started learning the new one, who took that Saturnian discipline and applied it to emerging fields, built empires over the following decade. Quietly, without fanfare, without the flashy optimism of Sagittarius or the wild bets of Aries. They built the way Capricorns always build, brick by brick, day by day, until the structure was so solid that the world had no choice but to acknowledge it. The Capricorns who didn't recognize the shift, they spent the next 5 years trying to make 1995 in 1998, trying to force water era tools into a fire era world. Patient as always, let them try, in faith, until they finally understood that the cycle had changed, and the only option was to change with it. You're standing at the same fork right now, the same exact fork. Different technology, different economy, same Saturn, same choice. 1967, the time before that, Saturn entered Aries during the most turbulent social upheaval of the 20th century. Governments destabilized, cultural norms shattered. The old world was actively burning. And Capricorns, once again, were at the center, not as destroyers, as builders. While others rioted and retreated, Capricorns collected the fragments and started constructing what would become the institutional backbone of the next era. 2026, right now, the world is restructuring again. Technology is rewriting every industry. Artificial intelligence is replacing roles that existed for decades. Financial systems are shifting faster than policy can follow. The stability your parents promised you, the career path they said was safe, the retirement plan they told you to trust, all of it is being rewritten while you watch. And Capricorn is, once again, standing at the threshold with a hammer in hand and fire at the gate. Not by accident, by design. Saturn places its children at these thresholds deliberately, not to punish them, to give them first access to the new materials. While other signs wait for the dust to settle, Capricorns are already measuring the foundation. The pattern repeats because Saturn repeats, and Saturn's children repeat with it. Not the mistakes, Vanga marked Saturn's sign changes as the most consequential transits for those born under its dominion. She returned to this observation repeatedly throughout the 70s, tracking what happened to Capricorns each time Saturn shifted from a water sign to a fire sign. She found it was the most physically and psychologically, but also the one that produced the most concentrated results. She described a phenomenon she called accelerated construction. Breakthroughs that would normally take 5 to 7 years compressed into 18 months. Career leaps that defied normal progression. Relationship clarity that arrived like a blade cutting through years of accumulated confusion. Financial restructuring that didn't just repair old damage, but created entirely new foundations from materials that didn't exist before the fire. She noted something else that I think about often. Vanga observed that the Capricorns who thrived during the fire transition shared one quality: not intelligence, not connection, not money. Honesty about what the water era cost them. The ones who pretended Saturn in Pisces hadn't hurt them, who wore the mask of "I'm fine" through 2.5 years of erosion, those Capricorns carried the damage into the fire, and it slowed them down. The ones who acknowledged the cost, who said, "Yes, that era took something from me, and now I'm building with what's left," those were the ones who experienced the acceleration. The condition was specific. You had to stop mourning the water and pick up the hammer. You had to accept that the tools changed and learn the new ones without wasting energy grieving the old ones. You had to trade the patience of water for the precision of fire. That trade is open right now. Not in a month, now. Saturn doesn't wait for readiness. Saturn creates readiness through demand. And there is something else building in the sky that makes this week unlike any other Saturn and Aries week in living memory. 6 days from now, on February 20th, Saturn meets Neptune at 0 degrees Aries, the very first degree of the entire zodiac. A conjunction that happens once every 36 years. Dream meets structure. Vision meets discipline. Your ruler walks into that alignment carrying everything he just inherited from the mutual reception with Mars. I'll break down the conjunction as it approaches. It deserves its own focus. But understand the scope of what's happening. Saturn didn't just change sign last night. Saturn entered the most loaded few degrees of sky in decades, and you, as Saturn's child, entered it with him. 3 things before this weekend ends. Not rituals. 2, not affirmations. Strategic moves. 1, identify what's survived. Look at your life as it stands right now. Your career, your relationships, your health, your finances. What made it through the past 2.5 years intact? Those are your fireproof materials. Those are what Saturn tested in water and deemed strong enough to bring into the fire. Write them down. They're your building blocks for the next 2 years. 2, identify what dissolved. What didn't survive, Pisces? What friendships faded? What ambitions quietly died? What structures crumbled despite your best efforts? Don't mourn them. Saturn dissolved them on purpose. They were built on sand. The forge doesn't work with sand. 2, name them. Acknowledge them. Release them. They don't come with you. 3, answer one question honestly and write it down. If I knew Saturn would support me for 2 years, if I knew the cosmic architecture was designed to back my effort, what would I build? Don't overthink it. The first answer that surfaces is usually the true one. Saturn doesn't reward the calculated answer. Saturn rewards the honest one. Endurance is what separates Capricorn from every other sign in the zodiac. Not talent, not charm, not luck.